Okay, I think we're good. Denise, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yes, thank you, Jesse. Good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Boyle, and I am the Director of Philanthropy at the Community Foundation, Tampa Bay. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn about our annual competitive grant process and other ways that we work alongside nonprofits. I'm going to go through a little bit of Q&A with you all just for a little bit. The default view is speaker view, and this will provide the best experience. There is going to be a Q&A at the end of the session, but during the session, please use the Q&A down at the bottom as an opportunity to ask us questions as we go. Our team here will be answering them, and you all have the opportunity to upvote the questions. So this will help increase the priority. We will answer them again as they come in. And then at the very end, if there's a question that kind of is a broad brush question that everybody should hear about, maybe the speakers will take a second to answer them as we go, or again at the very end. So you are in store for a great hour session today, and we are very, very pleased to have so many people on the call today. I'd like to start off by introducing Patricia Douglas. She is the chair of our Tampa Metro Area Council. Patricia, take it away.
Thank you, Denise, and hi everyone, and good morning. I'm watching all of the chats with everyone entering their names, and it's just absolutely wonderful to see all of you here and so many people that I know. I apologize for my scratchy voice. I have just, I guess, one of those great summer head colds. So I've been involved with the Community Foundation for many, many years. And it's been, for me, actually, a major part of my philanthropic journey and my desire to serve the community. And the Community Foundation has really been a wonderful tool for me and really have enjoyed being involved. Back in 2014, I was chair of the board of the Community Foundation, and I first became involved, I would say, in the mid-2000s. For me, it was well, it was supposed to be a temporary leave from my law practice. It ended up becoming a permanent leave, but I sold, my interest in the firm. And as these things happened, it was late in the year, and my husband and I knew that we wanted to dedicate what we were able to obtain to the community in some fashion, but we didn't want to be pressed into trying to figure out what we were going to do, with the 4 weeks or so remaining in the year. And our professional advisor suggested the Community Foundation, and my immediate reaction was, what's the Community Foundation? So I started doing some research and peeked under the covers. And not only did I love what I saw from the perspective of a philanthropist and a donor, and the way that the Community Foundation could assist our family with our giving journey, if you will, I realized also just the tremendous role that the Community Foundation plays in our community in addressing needs in the community and really just being front and center. So I became what the CEO of the Community Foundation, Marlene, always calls me a student of community foundations, because honestly, it's a tremendous asset to any community. So I am now chairman of the Tampa Metro Area Council. As many of you know, we go by TMAC, and we have a wonderful council. And you're looking at the slide with our members. It's been our goal to ensure that we are representative of the community we serve, and have individuals from really all sorts of professions and interest in the community, from attorneys and professional advisors. We have bankers, we have philanthropists, we have nonprofit leaders. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful group. And we share, I guess all of us share, a real love for our community and the role that we play assisting the Community Foundation in both philanthropy and community service. And so we wear a lot of hats, and we all like the different hats we wear. We advocate on behalf of the Community Foundation. We serve as ambassadors, spreading the word to our own professional advisors, to other professional advisors in the community. But we also wear the hat of impacting community, community impact. And we have the privilege of looking at the grants that are submitted. And that's probably the single hardest thing that we do, because there are so many compelling grants and so many needs in the community. And we are looking forward very much to seeing your submissions and being a part of you as nonprofit leaders of your journey in helping your own nonprofit and really impacting the community. So thank you for being here today. And I will turn it back over to our community impact team. I think Jesse or Jessica, both.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for all your years of service to the Community Foundation, both as a chair and more recently as the chair of the TMAC Council. We so much support your help and everything we do in the community. I'm Jesse Caraggio. I'm the Vice President of Community Impact for the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. And we're going to go through a presentation, share about our competitive grants process, but I'd like to introduce my colleague, the newly promoted Jessica Sykes. Jessica.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jessica Sykes, Director of Nonprofit Relations. Typically, your first stop when you're coming to the Community Foundation as a nonprofit and have questions about our processes and our different grant opportunities. So I'm happy to be here with you today to share some information about our grants process. And I too saw so many familiar names and organizations in the chat. So thank you again for being here. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse to get us started.
So before we get into some of the details, I just wanted to share a little bit about those that may not be familiar with the Community Foundation, but essentially we at the Community Foundation are a community of givers, a community of philanthropists, and our focus is really to make an impact in the 5 counties we serve. So in addition to here in Hillsborough County, we serve Pinellas, and then our 3 counties to the north, our Nature Coast area, Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus. And our focus really is about creative philanthropy. How can we do the most for the community? And we do this through our work and our vision, and our focus, and working with leadership in all of the areas that we serve. We always like to start with kind of a value statement. What is our value proposition? What is it we're really trying to accomplish? And when we speak about our work with the community, specifically in the space of community impact, this is what we want to accomplish. We want to serve as a connector, a collaborator, a convener, and a catalyst within our community in order to accomplish our mission, which is to create positive change and ultimately build a better community here in the Tampa Bay area. So here's a little bit about this past year. I know this past year has been challenging for all of us, especially I know the work with nonprofits as we've been really trying to hold up the community. So our goal is to invest in relationships. So we really want to connect with our fund holders, our nonprofits, and our community. This is related to us being able to draw funding from various philanthropic organizations within the community and fund holders. But we had a record amount of contributions this year, a little over $36 million that were brought into the Community Foundation. We want to invest in our community. So we make investing in the community easy, inspired, and meaningful. This past year, we also had a record amount of grant making. So we had a little over almost $31.5 million that were made in grants. We did this in a number of different ways, including our family foundations, our fund holders funding directly to nonprofits, as well as some of the creative work we did around things like the nonprofit needs list, which I know many of you were involved in. This has resulted about $282 million that we've awarded since we started a little over 30 years ago in 1990. And then finally, not only do we want to invest today, we want to find a resource and continue investing for tomorrow. We want to be a resilient in that sense. So we're committed to building a better community today and tomorrow. And you can see we have record assets this past fiscal year of $374.5 million. And this is money set aside for future giving to continue to support the needs in our community. So just a quick breakdown in grants. If you're interested, these are NTE codes, which is the National Taxonomy for Exempt Entities. As nonprofits, you each have codes that are registered with the IRS. In fact, in some cases, you may have as many as 3 codes. But the very first code or the primary code here is shown. You can see the majority of the giving of that $31 million is in the space of education. At a little over 9 million, followed by health and human services, almost 8 million in that space. Then we have kind of a tie in the faith-based arts and culture community. And then we have community development, other, and then finally youth development. Next slide. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jessica, who's going to get down into some of the nuts and bolts and details about the competitive grants process. Jessica?
All right, so I'm going to share some new things with you about our competitive grants process this year, but I wanted to remind you first to, if you have any questions as we're going through these slides that you think of, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A. So new for this year are these information sessions, first of all. We are doing these in an effort to better prepare you for our grants process and to hopefully proactively answer some of your questions. We did make some slight modifications to both the letter of intent and full application form to hopefully make the process of applying a little bit easier for you. And just as a reminder, both the letter of intent and full application forms are completed through the online grant portal. Also new this year is a virtual donor sneak peek. We've done some sneak peek events in the past, and what those are is before we make decisions on which grants we're going to fund, we take our best proposals and we share those with our fund holders in an effort to see if they would like to help fund some of your requests. And then by doing that, it helps free up some of our money to be able to make grants to more of your requests. So this year, we're going to do something a lot like we did with the nonprofit needs list and posting these proposals online for our donors to see, and hopefully we get a little bit more traction with that process. So one of the most exciting things about our grants process this year is that we have a larger grant budget. We have $1 million to fund your requests across all of the different counties that we serve and across all of our different focus areas. It's almost twice as much as we had in our last grant cycle. So we're very excited to be able to fund more of your requests this year. And then lastly, we will be posting our letter of intent form in a PDF version on our website for you to view prior to logging into the grant portal and starting to fill out that form. Just so we know a lot of grant writers like to take that form, maybe convert it into a Word document and type all of their answers in there, and then come on to the grant portal and fill them in. So just as a reminder, even though we have that option for you on our website, you still will have to go and put it back into the grant portal. All right, so our targeted focus areas this year, they are the same as what we had in our last competitive grant process. So we had community vibrancy, positive education, empowering women and girls, economic mobility, and mental well-being. I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of these focus areas in a moment, along with Jesse. But first, we want to tell you how we came up with these focus areas. So about 5 years ago, we began partnering with the Tampa Bay Partnership in the United Way with assistance from the University of South Florida to develop an annual regional competitiveness report. And what this report is it basically compares the Tampa Bay region to 19 other communities or metropolitan areas that were similar to or that we aspire to be like on different metrics that help us understand our economy and what drives prosperity. So some of the indicators in this report include talent, transportation, civic quality types of things. So you're welcome to take a look at this report if you'd like yourself. There's a link at the bottom of the slide, www.stateoftheregion.com/rcr.html. Just to let you know, we will be posting these slides to our website at the end of this week and sending you a link to that page. Everybody who's registered or attended one of our sessions will be able to have access to these slides with all of the links contained therein, as well as we'll be posting a recording of one of the information sessions that we've done. So hopefully you'll have access to everything that you need. All right, so the first focus area that we're going to talk about is community vibrancy. The purpose of the community vibrancy area is to address issues with the environment, access to arts and culture, and collective impact in local neighborhoods. So an example of the collective impact would be an organization called Well Built Bikes that has an Earn a Bike program that's geared towards providing transportation in the form of a bike to those who are economically disadvantaged or even homeless. These people have an opportunity to go to Well Built Bikes, learn how to refurbish the bikes, and then they get to take one home. What this organization also does is then organize community bike rides to bring those people together to give them a sense of belonging and community. So that's just one example of a neighborhood collective impact initiative. This is important to us because we know that residents of engaged communities are more likely to be healthy, well-educated, and secure. We know that a vibrant, active community is essential for the well-being of the residents and for building a sense of community. So if you take a look at the bottom of this slide, we were ranked 13 out of 20 with those different comparison communities in the 2021 Regional Competitiveness Report. And that's on the number of cultural and recreational establishments per 10,000 residents. So we are in at 4.24 establishments per 10,000 residents. There's a graphic at the bottom, and it kind of shows us at the bottom right of the slide that we're trailing behind the US average of 4.71 establishments per 10,000. We were 13 this year, we were 13 the year before, and kind of at the bottom of that graphic, it lets you know that Nashville was actually the top performer with 8.14 establishments per 10,000 residents. So this is some of the information that we use to help determine this area as one of our priority focus areas.
So next area we have is economic mobility. Focus for economic mobility is really our post-high school area. So this would include things as internships, externships, those kinds of post-high school experiences, technical training opportunities, technical certificates, as well as more traditional education with 2-year, 4-year degree programs, as well as college certificates. We're very passionate about education. You saw there from the basic diagram there in terms of funding. Believe education opens doors and changes lives. We believe that many at-risk students have trouble taking advantage of educational opportunities due to life situations, so we want to work on ways to overcome that. We ranked 18th out of 20 in our comparison communities on the Regional Competitiveness Report. The specific measure was percentage of population age 16 to 24 neither employed nor enrolled. You can see it there, it was 12.36%. We actually dropped down. We were 17th last year and 18th this year. This is clearly an area that we want to work on. We've actually made some percentage gain progress, but not at the rate of our companion communities. So while we have made some improvements over the years in this area, we're not improving as fast as our peer communities. Clearly, this is an area that we need to work on.
All right, so next is mental well-being. The purpose of this focus area is to foster a state of well-being in which every individual can realize their potential. The idea is for people to be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and be able to make a contribution to the community. This is actually an area that we're very passionate about, as you'll hear a little bit about later from Jesse, as one of the initiatives that we have at the foundation that you guys may be able to participate in and take advantage of. So we know that research has shown that traumatic experiences are associated with both behavioral health and chronic physical health conditions, especially when occurring in childhood. This is actually a new metric in the Regional Competitiveness Report that we're excited is in there now. We were ranked 17th out of 20 in the last year's report as far as the number of mental health providers per 10,000 residents. So we're at 14.36. We know we need more providers and we need better access to those mental health providers. One of these startling statistics is 2 in 5 adults in the US experienced a mental illness or challenge in the last year. And we actually believe that number to be higher, particularly with the COVID pandemic.
So another area that touches on education, this area is positive education. So this area's focus is really pre-K through senior year of high school, so that pre-K to 12 range. A positive education is really a focus on things like social emotional learning, growth mindset, mindfulness, positivity. This is an area that we think is really important, and we know that these elements of social emotional learning have the ability to overcome traumatic experiences that youth have earlier in their lives. We rank 13th of 20 in this space in terms of high school graduation of economically disadvantaged. You can see there at 80.54%. We were 11th and have dropped down to 13th. Again, this is an area we have made progress in as a community, but we're not progressing as quickly as our comparison communities.
All right, the last focus area is empowering women and girls. And the purpose of this is really to address any aspect that has to do with helping women and girls do better, progress with their lives. So that includes safety and security, health and well-being, and economic opportunity. This is kind of one of those tricky areas where many of you have programs that overlap between empowering women and girls and mental well-being and economic mobility. So you're welcome to choose which focus area you think best meets your work when you're filling out our letter of intent form. So we know that gender inequalities exist in our society, and we seek to curb this as much as possible. While this is currently not one of the metrics in our regional competitiveness report, we know that 25% of all women will experience domestic violence at some point in their lives, and women are nearly twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression. So anything that we can do to help change these numbers is something we're very passionate about as well. In addition to those 5 focus areas, we have universal strategy screens that we take into consideration when we're reviewing all of your letters of intent and applications. So while it's something to note is you don't have to meet all of these strategy screens, but the more that you meet and the better that you meet them, the more likely your request is to score higher when staff's reviewing them. So the first one is collaboration, which includes demonstrations of partnerships and multiple funding sources. We feel like there's often better outcomes when groups are working together to make progress. Next is innovation. And this is kind of a description how your project might be different, maybe not following a traditional approach to solving a problem, but also ensuring that your work is founded in research and best practice. One of the most important strategy screens is your measurable outcomes. We want you to use data when you're stating the need for your case, but we also want to know how are you measuring the impact of your work in the community and the people that you're trying to impact their lives. So data should go beyond process metrics to show true impact. An example of this would be, let's say you have an after-school program that's addressing a particular type of need. The process metric would be the number of individuals that are participating in that program, but the true impact is how is that program changing their lives? So that's something to keep in mind when you're sharing your estimated outcomes with us in your application and LOI forms. Next is community visibility. We believe that your project should be visible in the community and that this helps to encourage future support and funding opportunities for your organization. And then last is equity. So careful attention will be paid to ensure that your projects incorporate inclusive practices and equitable outcomes. We really want to see that your work is impacting at-risk populations. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse to talk a little bit more about our timeline and the process.
So kind of just to walk through the process, I guess before we start on the specific dates and kind of the step-by-step on the process, what I wanted to share is the process in the past has been highly competitive. So when we originally did this process, both Jessica and I have been with the Community Foundation around 3 years now, but in our first cycle that we worked on together, we would typically end up awarding out of the LOIs that were submitted, about 1 in 5 would make it through the entire process and get funded. This past cycle that we went through, we had about a 40% increase in the number of LOIs that were received. So we received 278 LOIs. We ended up funding about 10 of those by the end of the process. So About 1 in 10 actually got funded in this next cycle. Now we do have more funding this year. We're very excited about the opportunity to have a larger competitive grants budget. But I will caution, we're also expecting a lot more letters of intent to come in the process. So we hope that we will reduce that statistic, but also keep in mind that in general, this has always been a competitive process, regardless of the amount of money that was there. Our grant process will open up on October 13th. That is the first time you're able to go into the system and begin to submit letters of intent. They need to be all submitted in by November 12th. So if you have about a month window in order to do that, that's also the reason we're holding these information sessions earlier, to give you time to think about and work through your proposals. We'll do a review internally of those LOIs, and then we will request full proposals. Those requests will be made on December 10th. And then you have about a month. If you make it to that phase, you have about a month to turn in that full application. We then review the applications and recommend the best applications for funding. Typically, there are more applications than there is funding for, because there are so many good projects that we see from nonprofits in the community. What we've done in the past to help leverage that funding, it may possibly go even a little further, is we've worked with our unfund holders who have family foundations and DAFs with us, and we've shared these proposals. We've typically done that in person with a process we created a couple of years ago called the Sneak Peek. What we're going to do this year is do that process virtually. So we're actually going to post publicly the very best proposals that we have and share those with our community and other philanthropists in the community. Our hope is that some of those get funded externally outside of the foundation through our own fund holders or through other community philanthropists. What that enables us to do is have our money go further. And then what remains, we are able to fund and move forward. We'll also take these very best proposals that we have and we'll bring them forward to our council to help us with the review and evaluation process. You can see we have 2 weeks set aside to work with all of our regional councils. I want to mention that all regional councils see all of the best proposals. They're not limited to geographic area. And we do that intentionally for the purpose of really sharing the information with our regional councils for something that may actually not even be occurring in their area, but could be in the near future. So everything's shared with each one. The weight of the decision process, and we use a holistic rubric process, is with the region of which it's located. But I will share, if you're a nonprofit and you serve multiple regions, you do have the opportunity to select that on the application. So you don't have to put in multiple applications for each region. You have the ability to check that on the LOI as well as the application process. Those recommendations then go to our Council of Chairs, who do the review and ultimately recommend the proposals onto our Board of Trustees. They will be meeting on March 29th to review those recommendations and make final decisions. We will notify the final application award winners about a week later, and then funding will go out about a week after that. So that gives you an idea of the timeline. We're going to share a lot of information here, but all of the information we're going to share and then some is located on our website. And you see the link there, and we'll place that in the chat as well. If you go to our website and go to grant application process, you see the link, gives you a lot of information about our process. We also have information at that same location. There's a link that you can access there on previous grant awards. So if you want to see what was awarded through our competitive grant cycle through our last few cycles, you can see the name of the nonprofit. You can see the amount that they were awarded, and you can see what area they're awarded under and detail about that. So that's a great way to get to see information about the process and learn more about the process and the kinds of things we look at. The last thing I want to share, just some insight as you're thinking about putting together your proposal. Keep in mind, we are a community foundation. You can tell that by the wide breadth of things that we fund in the community. But as such, from start to finish, from LOI to ultimately final award, there are about 50 individuals that are part of the review process. And they each have different perspectives. Some may be very analytical and statistical like me. With my PhD in educational statistics, and that's what I often like to see. But you might have others that are more interested in hearing about the narrative. So make sure as you're putting together your proposal that you actually have a blend of those elements as you're putting together your LOI to share it with us at the Community Foundation. Next slide, Jessica. So one of the additional opportunities that I want to share with you, and this is a new process called the Critical Needs List. Many of you, I think, were involved in our nonprofit needs list, which was a program that we really designed within a week of the community closing down. And it ran from about mid-March through the following April, and it was really related to COVID-related needs. Through the process, we were able to get out about $4.5 million into the community, focusing on those COVID-related needs, working with our fund holders, working with other philanthropists in the community. We're quite proud of that work. And we actually, in our reporting for that work, we actually helped serve 675,000 people in our local community. So we think that was a really good process at a much needed time in our community. We wanted to take advantage of some of the things we learned through that process. So we started something new called a Critical Needs List, also a way to publicly share needs out in the community with everyone. And nonprofits are eligible to submit for this. It is a very defined need. So you can see we're defining a critical need as unbudgeted, unforeseen, time sensitive, and one that significantly interferes with a nonprofit's ability to provide critical services. You know, the example that we often talked about, and there's about 20 plus there on our website if you want to take a look at some of the needs that are posted. But we often talked about a domestic violence shelter that has one location, has an older building, and their air conditioning goes out. And that really puts them as a disadvantage and impacts the services they provide for those living there at the shelter. So we wanted to create a process where we could post this information publicly and work with folks in the community to address these needs. I caution this particular one is not a competitive grants process. There is no exception or denial. It's a way to share this information publicly and work alongside our fund holders and other philanthropists to try to address some of these needs in our community. So if you get a chance, I definitely encourage you to take a look. You can see the link there. Again, we'll put the link into the chat information, but it's accessible right off of our webpage. So now I'm going to turn it over to Denise. That's going to talk a little bit about other ways in which the Community Foundation works with nonprofits. Denise?
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, so I want to let you all know, first of all, I'm sitting in our Pinellas County office located in downtown St. Petersburg. As the community starts to open up more, we do encourage you to reach out and to use our space. This is a philanthropic hub of sorts. And so whether you need to have a board meeting or a meeting with a donor that's over here in Pinellas, we've got a great coffee machine. Press of a button, you can get a cappuccino or a cup of coffee, but we're here to help assist you all in your philanthropic goals. And one of those is to have an extra location to help support the work that you all are doing. So please do reach out to us if you would like to use this space. Some of the things that we also do is we play matchmaker and raise visibility. And we do this directly through this competitive grant process or the critical needs lists. During COVID, we were able to help match $4.5 million, get $4.5 million, out into the community. And a lot of that came from our donor advised funds or our family foundations or corporate foundations here at the Community Foundation. A donor advised fund is this wonderful pot of money, like a charitable giving account that sits there and is ready for donors to give to the community at a drop of a dime. And so what we try to do as part of our philanthropy team is do a little bit of that matchmaking. So facilitating connections with fund holders. What we do is we take your needs and we bring them to the donors, or the fund holders come to us and say, hey, we're really interested in, broad brush stroke, early education. We're able to take your early education applications and share them directly with the donors. And so this is a great opportunity for us to use your words directly to inspire our current phone holders and or community to give to your organizations. This is part of our sharing your needs. The second way that we work alongside you all is with your nonprofit charitable investments. We have several organizations in the community who have agency endowments, and this is where you are looking for sustainable long-term funding revenue back to your organization. Currently, our annual distribution amount is 4.4%, and so if there's $100,000 in the endowment, then your organization can count on getting $4,400. And this is a great way to grow your legacy plans, your legacy, your long-term plan giving type of strategies. And so endowments are really good for the sustainability of your organization. The second is a reserve fund. And this is kind of your rainy day. This is your savings account. This is an opportunity for you all to have funds that can grow, but you have direct access back to them. And then the third way is through a charitable gift annuity. We are the administrator of several different nonprofits annuity programs. And so we help run those illustrations and we help walk alongside the nonprofits. If they have a donor who wants income for life and then the residual of that annuity becomes an endowment for your organization. So they're charitable from the start, they're getting some income annuity payments throughout their lifetime. And when they pass away, there's a named endowment for your organization. So great opportunities there for you guys to have some extra added investments with the Community Foundation. Again, it grows in our pool. And then you guys have the ability to continue to invest in your organization. Another way that we work alongside our nonprofits is we accept those complex gifts. And so I'll use that reserve fund, for example. This first picture here is of stocks. There's a nonprofit in North Pinellas who does not accept stock. They don't have the ability to do so. Well, they had a donor who wanted to help with a fundraising initiative, and it was $25,000. And so they were able to open a reserve fund at the Community Foundation. We accepted the stock, the donor's gift. We receipted them for that stock, and then we put it into a reserve fund for that specific organization. And that organization had access to those funds within days. They could take it all out at once, or they could take it out over time as their organization needed it. The second thing here is real estate. We have worked with a variety of folks on accepting rental properties or homes or different things along those lines. So if those are things you're not able to do, what the donor can do is they can come to us. We can create either a donor advised fund or an agency reserve fund. And if they create a donor advised fund, the donor has more access to those dollars and can give them to your organization and other organizations in the community, or it can help create an agency reserve fund or endowment. And this last one, really great example. We live in a very entrepreneurial community. And so people are buying and selling businesses all the time. And so this past year, we were able to help a family gift business interest. And it was about $9 million. And there's an extra $1 million this year that came into the Community Foundation and went right back out into the community. And we were able to help facilitate those type of complex assets, those complex gifts. And we do this alongside our nonprofit community. So cryptocurrency, we usually say anything, but that doesn't have eyes and wheels. And so if there's opportunities for us to work alongside you to help with your charitable investments, please let us know. And so finally here is our endowment match challenge. As we talked about in previous few slides, endowments are long-term sustainable funds that we hold at the Community Foundation that benefit your organization. So we're doing a match challenge. It's a 3-to-1 match, a 1-to-3 match. Our $1 for every $3. So if you guys, I'm going to use round numbers, $100,000 endowment, the Community Foundation will put another $33,333 into that match. Our minimum endowment amount is $25,000, and which would result in an $8,333 match. And then the maximum contribution is your $300,000 and our Community Foundation match of $100,000. What's really nice is that this can pertain to both donors. So if you have a donor who wants to give to an endowment, they can do the match, and you as an organization can also do the match. So this is individuals or nonprofits. We've had a few folks create scholarship funds or create their own named endowment for a variety of organizations. And so they are able to get these matches. It is limited bucket of money. And then if you do go through the endowment match challenge, you have to wait 6 months until you can apply again. We are trying to stretch these match dollars as far as we can. So if you have any questions about wanting to either add to your endowment or create a new endowment, please do reach out. This visual, I'm a visual learner and love pictures. And so this just shows quickly how if your initial investment of $50,000 and over 10 years, 25 years, or 50 years, how it can grow very quickly. There is an assumption here that the annual distribution rate is 4% and the return on investment is 7.5%. I will say we are running a little above the 7.5% return on investment over our 30-year history. So this is actually a really great photo. And so if you want to see how your dollars can grow and grow, here's a great opportunity to make a case to your board or to a donor. So please do consider reaching out if you have any other questions. But for now, I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse to talk about our other initiatives.
So thank you, Denise. So before we dive into looking at answering some of the questions, and we've been trying to answer some as we've gone along, so hopefully you guys appreciate those responses. And if you haven't, take a look at the answered questions under the Q&A. I see there's about 4 more, and go ahead, please continue to put them in there and we'll respond as we go along. Here's a couple initiatives I just wanted to mention real quick. Lead Tampa Bay, many of you probably have heard about. That's our initiative working in the post-education space. We work alongside our colleges, school districts, university to really improve education in our community and hopefully increase our attainment rate. Our goal is to have 60% of working adults have some type of degree, certificate, or workable credential by 2025. I think we've made progress every year over the last 4 or 5 years. We've had the program. I think currently we're about 55.2% on our way to 60%. Thrive by 5 is a program that has been operating primarily in Pinellas. We are the new backbone organization for Thrive by 5, so their focus is on kindergarten readiness. And we just September 1st transitioned to become the new backbone organization for Thrive by 5. They have an event coming up if you're interested, a nonprofit working in that space. It's the Family Friendly Business Awards. It's on October 19th. There's the link, and we'll share that in the chat as well. Mental Health First Aid is a program that we've worked on. You heard Jessica mention before about the significance of mental health in our community. We really believe this will be the next big issue in our community when COVID dies down, which it seems like it's dying down, knock on wood. But we believe mental health is going to be the next big significant issue in our community. And we're seeing it in violence. We're seeing it in suicide rates and drug addiction since we've been coming out of this pandemic. Free of charge for nonprofit organizations. If you're interested in getting some of your staff trained in mental health first aid, it's a national certification by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. Go to our site. There's ability to connect with our partner, St. Petersburg College, and we will cover the cost of the training. It's about an 8-hour commitment, 3 hours self-paced education, and about 5 hours in a virtual setting under the guidance of an instructor. And it's, again, I think it's a great way to really get your staff informed about some of the issues around mental health and provide assistance to those that may be in need. And finally, the Alliance for Advocacy of Philanthropy is a partnership that we have with Stetson College of Law, which includes us having some students who serve as fellows of the Community Foundation. We have 2 students, normally 3rd-year law students, that work with us every fall and spring, and we work with a number of other students in pro bono opportunities. So that's just a little bit about our initiatives. Let me go on and we'll begin our discussion on question and answer. Real quickly, we've had a brand change, which many of you probably noticed during this presentation, but we're also updating our website. Right now, it's currently in a state of transition, so it has a new front page. But if you want to get to the previous page that many of you are probably familiar with, click the yellow bar and say View Current Site. That'll actually take you to the older page, and click grants, and all the links that we've been giving you are located in that grants area. For more information, there's Jessica's contact information, which is also in numerous places within our grants information site. We are doing a lot with social media over this past year. In fact, we have a post going out every single day. So to keep up with some of the things that we're working on with the Community Foundation, I strongly encourage that. So with all that, let's jump into our question and answer session.
Okay.
Jessica, you want to share some of our questions?
Yes, the first question that I see here is, for the upcoming cycle, when does the funding period begin and end? Is it concurrent with the calendar year, or does it begin in April after funds are awarded?
So it's 1 year after the award. And I think I may have even answered that in a previous question. So please do check some of the previous questions. But yeah, it's awarded, it's 1 year, so you'll receive it and you'll have an outcomes report that's due 1 year afterwards.
Okay, the next question is, can an organization apply for multiple grant initiatives and I think what we mean here is targeted focus areas such as positive education and mental well-being, as long as they are tied to ongoing services the organization offers.
So we generally don't recommend it. And usually we do not award more than one to the same organization. The reason we generally don't recommend it, we don't prohibit it, but we don't recommend it, because in some cases you might find a situation where you're competing for yourself for funds. So I certainly wouldn't do it within the same focus area, but I would also make sure you really have strong proposals if you're going to do it across in two separate areas, because it's really hard to get more than one per organization. So what we really recommend is put your best foot forward, come up with what you believe is the best, most competitive proposal, and really put your focus and energy into that.
Okay, next. Do we offer any grants for animal rescue organizations? Is there any way for that to fit under one of our focus areas?
So I think with that, Mike, so it's not about the organization, and it's not about your specific organization's mission, it's about the proposal. So when you're trying to fit in what you want to do in the focus areas, do it according to what your proposal is going to accomplish, not who your organization is. I think a lot of times we have organizations say, well, that's slightly different than my mission. It's not all about your mission. It's about what your project proposal. That's what we're going to align to the individual focus areas. I think where this one may fit is in the area of community vibrancy. But where I would focus in is where does it impact individuals? How does animal rescue make the community more vibrant? So I think that would be the focus on that, but I think it could fit within the area of community vibrancy.
Okay, is there a mental health first aid course appropriate for college age students?
So the course that we have, there's a couple different versions of the course. There's actually a adults working with adults, and there's adults working with youth. I think the adults working with adults would be appropriate for the college age. You know, we, in the mental health space, we certainly have a lot of concerns when it comes to mental health. And in fact, we're working alongside LEAD Tampa Bay on an initiative related to mental health for students. In fact, it's called Your College Cares, and we're working alongside even beyond the education institutions involved with LEAP. I think there's 5 or 6 that are working on this initiative called Your College Cares. But what we do know from the data is a lot of times serious mental health illnesses begin to emerge in that age range between 18 and 24. And of course, the issue is that if you're a college student, a lot of times people just say, oh, well, you're a college student and you have stress and you have this and you have that. When something serious could be emerging, often it doesn't get the attention or, you know, potentially diagnosis that it needs. So we are very sensitive about that space, but I would say the Youth for Youth is probably the best one. And then keep your eyes out for this work that's going to be going on very soon in the Your College Care space.
Right, next. Are out-of-state organizations eligible to apply for grant funding if serving the local community?
So it is about serving the local community. So you can be, we recently did some work last year along with Hillsborough County with some CARES funding. That was really us working as an ambassador for the county. They did have some restrictions where you had to be actually located in Pinellas County. Our competitive grant process isn't set up that way. So you can be outside the area, but you have to show clear evidence that you're serving the needs of residents within our space.
Okay, here's a good question. How many of the 278 letters of intent were asked to submit a complete application? And then how many grants were made?
So I don't have that number off the top of my head. Jessica, I don't know if you have it off the top of your head.
I do.
Oh, okay.
We
Excellent.
invited, it was 82 or 83 of those were invited to submit a complete application. And then I believe we ultimately ended up funding about 28 of those.
Yes, I know the 28, I'm sure that's the correct number. But thank you. I didn't have that other one in my head.
Yep, no problem. And that was with a budget of under 600,000. So it was just over 500,000 awarded to those. Okay. Next is, does the economic mobility focus only serve young adults between 16 to 24?
So that is the focus on economic mobility, because economic mobility is really focused on more post-high school experiences. If you're working with youth in kind of an educational setting, then the other one I would recommend is positive education, because that's focused more on the pre-K through 12th grade time sector.
And I would add to that, if you're addressing employability skills for those over 24, that qualifies as well in this area. Okay, what's the maximum grant award for the 1-year period? It's a tricky one.
So there is no maximum grant that you can request. You know, I will caution, there's no minimum and no maximum. We give an average, and I think Denise was doing her best to put some ranges in there. You'll see, you know, we have awarded larger grants than obviously the average, and the average means just what it is. It's the average when you put everything on paper. So there is no maximum, but I would caution you in terms of the amount. I mean, when we were giving out about 600,000, we had somebody put in for a request of $1.5 million. Now, I can pretty much guarantee when you have a $600,000 budget that you're not going to award a grant of $1.5 million. So the grant budget is $1 million. You know, if you're going to come in and you know, at $1 million, most likely we're not going to award just one. So what I think is most important to us when we look at these, and I had a question earlier about would we expect more awardees or more larger grants? And I would expect more awardees, but I might also expect the average grant amount to go up given the $1 million budget. I think what's most important here is that you have the right dollar request for the right work that you're going to do. That's something we pay a lot of attention to, in both ways. We don't want something so ambitious and not enough money being requested that we don't think it can be accomplished, or vice versa, that it's a lot of money, but that it's not as much work. So that alignment's really important to us. Excuse me.
Okay. The next question is, how can we best prepare for the letter of intent now before it opens in the portal? When is the LOI criteria PDF that's coming soon on your website expected to be available? So I think our goal would be to get that up on our website by Friday, and hopefully be able to send everyone an email with a link to that webpage that will have our slides, the letter of intent, as well as a recording of the session. Worst case, it would be this next Monday, so a week from today. The application does open on October 13th, so it gives you a few days in advance, and then you do have a whole 4 weeks to get your letter of intent submitted. So hopefully that gives you plenty of time, even though that PDF is not available right this moment. But I would go ahead and go to our website, you know, those links that Jesse shared earlier, because they really do give you a lot of information more about our targeted focus areas and more about those universal strategy screens, what things we will consider funding, what things we won't consider funding. So there's a little bit more information there for you to view. And then the next question is, do you advise on whether one should submit an LOI versus submitting a proposal for the critical needs list?
So the answer to that really depends on what it is you're requesting. So, you know, there are some very specific definitions to what a critical need is. If you feel you meet that in terms of a critical need, because that's really a critical need is really a dire issue that's going on right now. I would say that's where you'd submit it. I wouldn't think there would be anything that would be eligible for a critical need that's dire at this moment that you would say I can submit for, but then I'm not going to get funding till April. Because we're really thinking this is dire request, meaning your nonprofit may not be around in April if you don't get the funding that you need right now. So I think they're very different processes. I think the critical needs about some issue you're having right now that you have to address. And again, you know, double check the definition. The information is on our website. Where the competitive grants process is a process for us to serve as a catalyst for funding specific project work that your nonprofit's doing.
Okay, here's another good question. So just to clarify, the new grant cycle will begin in April 22. So proposals should request funding for grant activities from April of 2022 to April of 2023. If you have a project that begins in January of 2022 and ends in April of 2022, can you apply for support for that?
So, you know, of course, with some of these questions, we get down into some of the detail that there are nuances. You know, if you have a project, because we don't just fund new projects, we also fund ongoing projects. So if you had a project that started in January and you have some funding for it already and you're looking for some additional funding to continue it, it would make sense for you to apply for the process. If you had you know, I wouldn't say a project has to start exactly in April and end in April, because you may have a project for something that you're trying to do in August. and it's 1 month, and you're looking for funding, and it's within that window. So I'd say, it can be something that's already started, but keep in mind is the funding you're going to receive is for that window of time, with an expectation that there's an outcome report 1 year later.
Okay. Next question. If the competitive amount is $1 million, what is available in the nonprofit needs list?
So the nonprofit needs list was sunsetted at the end of April. So that ran for a 13-month process. So I think I'm not sure you're actually referring to the nonprofit needs list because that's currently not active. You might be referring to the critical needs list, and it is not a competitive grants process. There is not a set budget of funding for it. It's an opportunity to share those needs with the general public, with our fund holders, with other community philanthropists, and us to communicate your needs out in the community and try to work to get funding. So there's not a specific budget allocated for the critical needs list.
Okay. Let's see, we still have, about 4 minutes left, I think. I have one question in here. So if you have any more questions, please go ahead and type them in. As a new nonprofit with no paid volunteers, is it okay to ask for a salary in addition to funding for operating cost of programs?
So there's a couple of things you'll see on the website that we don't fund. We don't fund capital expenses. We don't like to fund salary just for the sake of salary. If it is a new project and you're looking for some assistance for salary to get that project going and it's part of the project, then I think it would be eligible. But if you're looking for just funds to help with salary, that's not the kind of funding that these projects would be eligible for.
Okay. Do you find yourself funding specific focus areas in certain counties? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any specific alignment like that. I think we generally see some of the areas in each of the counties that we serve.
I think we do try to pay attention to making sure that we've definitely covered all of the different focus areas somewhat equally.
Yeah.
In our awards process, and then that we've tried our best to cover the different geographic areas equally, but not necessarily down to focus area per county.
So I see we're at 10 o'clock, and I think we've answered all of our questions. Is that right, Jessica?
I don't see any more questions in the Q&A.
Okay. So I want to, you've got some contact information on the webpage. Certainly encourage you. Everything that we've mentioned is already on our webpage, and then some. We are going to work to get this information out there publicly as well. We're doing 4 of these. We've had over 400 folks register, and I imagine we'll have more than that actually participate. We will share this. We will share the slides probably in the next week or so. We will also post information on our page, including the PDF of the LOI. We'll try to do that in the next week as well, so you'll have a chance to see those questions. One of the things I didn't share before, there aren't very many questions. There's like 14 questions on the LOI, and then the LOI becomes part of the full application, and the full application with the LOI only has about 40 questions. So it's not an elaborate process per se. So we try to make it as easy and as reasonable as possible. I wanted to thank Jessica for being on the call. I want to thank Deneve. I want to thank Patricia for all her service to the work, and thank her for being on the call today. And I also want to thank all of you as nonprofits. So I know how important you are to our community. I know how difficult this last year has been, and we truly believe nonprofits are the lifeblood of our community. And I truly believe that all you out there held our community up during one of our most dire times over this last year and a half. So I just wanted to take a second and thank you for all your hard work. Wish you the best of luck in the process, and know that we're here to help if you have any questions. All right, thank you all. I think you might be muted, Jessica. Oh.